went from flying business class to literally living in the closet.
You were living a life so many people dreamed of. Why give that all up?
I think I was climbing the wrong hill. I got to the peak of it and I was like, wait a minute, I'm living somebody else's dream. There have been so many unicorn founders that came out of this house. High Touch, which is now Unicorn, the 3 founders to work together here at this hacker house.
You had this idea of building this HyperSpell, the brain for your company.
It's not about individual agents, it's about a brain for your entire company that all the agents can tap into. There's this YC fund, Rebel Fund. They had a list of all the categories that make the best YC founders. My co-founder and I looked down the list, we were like, we meet none of those criteria, 0. Guess who invested in our fundraising round? 10 million impressions on Twitter in the last year. As a company, we haven't done any outbound at all. All of our customers have been inbound. We have former neuroscientists. Our head of go-to-market is a former soldier and was a semi-professional basketball player, played on the Israeli national team.
It's been a few months since you wrapped up YC.
That's right.
What is you and your team up to now?
We are very close to closing another Fortune 500 that I used to work for as a consultant.
So I'm supposed to be meeting Connor, a founder, and he told me this location. I don't know if this is it. Where? Oh wait, I think that's him. Hey, are you Connor?
Hey, yeah,
Hey,
I am.
I'm Julia.
Hi, Julia.
I'm supposed
Great
to
to meet you.
interview you for the podcast.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, do you want to do it right now?
Oh, like right now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's go.
Okay, sweet. So we're gonna do some fill in the blanks. You ready?
Okay.
You grew up on a farm in?
Scottsville, Western New York, population 2,000.
You dropped out of school at 12 and started college at?
13.
Wow. You spent years at Boston Consulting Group advising really big companies, and then you gave it all up to live in?
A hacker house, mission control. It's actually right here if you want to see it.
Oh, that's the hacker house.
Yeah,
Oh
this is
my
the
God.
entrance right here.
That's
I know
so
it's not
cool.
obvious with this abandoned building, but do you want to go see?
And what are you building?
I'm building HyperSpell. HyperSpell is your company brain.
That is so sick. Okay, yeah,
Yep.
let's do the tour.
Cool.
And also, is it true that you lived in a closet?
I did live in a closet. Yeah, we can go see it.
Oh my God.
That's
sick.
so this is where it all started, where it all began.
Wow. So Connor, you used to live here?
That's right. I lived here for a full year in the early days when I was starting HyperSpell.
Oh my God. So we're approaching the first floor.
That's right.
What does this area mean to you?
Yeah, so I started off when I first moved to MC. I was living downstairs in that room over there. And you know, this floor was the really early days of HyperSpell. The original company name was not HyperSpell. So we called the company Echo AI because the idea was it's like a digital echo of employees, you know, it gets all the context from a person. But it was in this very room where we decided to change the name to HyperSpell. And the process of doing it was we actually, you know, we're very AI pilled and we said, okay, let's get a bunch of agents to come up with a bunch of names. And for every name, search the .ai, the .com, see if there's any SEO competition. Because the problem was with Echo AI, there were 5 other companies named Echo AI. So we are the only company in the world named HyperSpell, and we own HyperSpell.com. So I bought it in this very room when it all started.
Oh my God. That's so nostalgic.
Yeah, it's good memories. It brings me back to all this time. You know, it was fun being surrounded by friends in the early days of building.
What's over there?
Yeah, so over here is our, so this was my room when I first moved in here. So we were originally building our own AI agents, and then we realized that like none of these agents were useful without having the right context. And I kept thinking back to when I was working in consulting at BCG, you know, I'd work inside of all these big companies, and there's so many people's jobs that are just like moving information around, you know, their middle management. They would talk to this person, update that person. And I kept thinking about that. And I was like, wow, like there's got to be a better way to solve this. And that's part of where the idea for HyperSpell was born. Yeah.
What is this shed?
Yeah, so this is, so the amazing thing about Mission Control is at any one time, there'll be between 10 and 17 people living at Mission Control. And this is one of the places where people have lived in the past. And so, you know, it's a 10-bedroom house, so founders will live in the house, but a lot of founders have lived here while they were early in bootstrapping or just raised, you know, small funding, kind of like me. And so there was one guy who wanted a place to stay in the house, but there were no rooms available. So he built this shed where we're sitting now and then stayed in the shed for 6 months while he was early in his company. And so it's nice because, Mission Control, it's a very gritty place. Like if you come here, you saw the abandoned storefront outside. If you come here, it's because you really, really want to build something and you're very committed and you want to make it happen. I think that's part of the reason why there have been so many unicorn founders that came out of this house.
What are some like cool people that?
Oh man, well, have you heard of Scale AI?
Oh yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, so Scale AI, one of the founders lived here.
Lucy.
Lucy, yeah. High Touch, the founders actually met here. And Pylon, the founder Marty, lived here, and he got his first customer from the house. There's another roommate in the house, which is an unbelievable story. There's a bunch of other ones. True Wind, Feathery, Palette, one of the founders lived here. Workflows, which was sold to Apple, Jam.dev. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There's even, there's this legend that Vitalik Buterin would crash here on couches for weeks at a time early in the days before he founded Ethereum. And the funniest thing was, Dylan Field from Figma actually spoke to our YC batch. And I got a chance to chat with him afterwards. And, we were talking, and I mentioned I lived in Mission Control. And immediately his face lit up. He's like, oh, I remember Mission Control. I spent so many time there. I may have crashed there a few nights, because it was a Teal Fellow house originally. It was founded around 2014, and it was all Teal Fellows that lived in the house working on their companies. So it's a nice place to be. There's a lot of history here.
And so, I'm curious, did you know about the history before coming to Mission Control? How did you hear about?
Yeah, well, it's funny. My story at Mission Control actually started even before I lived here. So I was crashing in another house, and I was early on in my company journey, and I didn't have a co-founder yet. And I was like, well, it'd be amazing to meet a co-founder. And so I'd been to a few events of the house. I was friends with people in the house, and they encouraged me to apply to the On Deck Fellowship, ODF. And a bunch of people in the house had, been part of ODF and done ODF. And so I was actually hanging out in Mission Control down the hallway there when I sent in my ODF application, which is a program to, find co-founders for people that are early in building. Now, the crazy thing was I got rejected from ODF, and I was still in the house, and I got the rejection email. They said, oh, sorry, we think you're too far along. This program is for people who are really early. But they said, if there's anything we're missing or misunderstood, let us know. And so I asked the other people in the house. They were like, oh, yeah, we know them. No, it's fine. Give them more context. So I said, all right, well, actually, I'm open to finding a new co-founder. I'm not too far along. And then ODF changed their mind, to their credit. And he came back. He's like, okay, great. Thanks for the context. We want to interview you. And that's where I met my co-founder that we're working together today at HyperSpell. And I got into ODF while I was in this house. I applied. I wasn't even living here. I was just hanging out with friends here. And so MC was very much part of my journey, from the earliest days. And I knew the community. I liked the people from the community. I was living in another house nearby, and it was always it's always a dream to become part of this community.
Let's go check out the room over there. I see there's
Sounds
like
great.
a gym.
Yeah, that's where it all started. So this is, if you're a truly locked-in founder, you are a gym founder. And so there's lots of stories with MC. There's many founders that have lived here over the years. And there's a story that one of the founders of Palette was living in this room, and he would stay up super, super late at night working. And then there was another founder who would come and work out here super early in the morning. And a lot of times they would run into each other at like 5 in the morning, as this guy was going to sleep and this guy was waking up to work out. And so it's very much a people where, a place where there's all of these locked in, focused individuals. So yeah, this is the room, the workspace at MC, where I originally applied to On Deck, where I met my co-founder.
Okay.
And so where a lot of this originally started. I was at one of these desks, and then I got that initial rejection email, and then I responded back to it, turned things around, and got in. And there's so much history in this room. This is still, I drew this. It's still up here. Yeah.
No way.
Is early in the days of HyperSpell.
Wait,
we were
it's not. No one's erasing it.
No one's erased it yet.
Oh
yeah, it's still there. Almost a year later.
Okay, so early state HyperSpell. Like, what do we see here?
Yeah. Well, this is originally. We were originally building out the product. Again, it's like the one central store of context for your entire company, and you can see this is pulling from this is Slack and Google Drive and email and messages, and then extracting the data from it, transforming it, turning it into one company brain. And so You can see here, this is like the early sketches of when we were first mapping out our architecture and building it.
Let's take a seat here.
Yeah.
And is there some lore that happened in this room?
Oh, there's so much lore. Well, I told you about, I applied to On Deck in this room, which is where I met my co-founder, and I got rejected initially. But they sent me this email, let us know if there's anything that we missed or misunderstood. And so I sent them this long explanation, and On Deck, to their credit, changed their mind. That's where I met my co-founder, and that's how it all started. But there was another rejection that happened in this room. So I met my co-founder, things were going well, and we decided that we wanted to do YC. We thought it'd be a great community, a great way to kind of bring our infrastructure to other companies. And so we applied to YC a few times, and in total, we got rejected from YC 6 times. And that last rejection actually happened in this room. So we did the interview over there at one of the desks, talked to the partners, and it was in this very room that we kind of like did the interview, and then the next day I got the email with the news that we didn't get in. But it's all right, because on the 7th time we got in, and I'll tell you more about that soon.
Okay. And before we get into more of that, let's go all the way back. I mean, you mentioned you were living like such a great life in New York City, working as a consultant. I mean, you were living a life so many people dreamed of. Why give that all up?
It's funny because in some ways it was my dream too. Like, I grew up in this tiny town, 2,000 people, grew up on a farm. I was super into sci-fi as a kid. I was building Lego robots. I dropped out of school at 12 because I wanted to teach myself, and I kind of, didn't fit in, started college at 13. And I really wanted to be in a place where there were kind of opportunities opening up for me, and being at the center of the world, because I came from this, very, very small town. And so ended up getting a job at BCG, and I was working with some of the biggest companies in the world, Walmart, and Pfizer, and MetLife, and advising them on really important stuff and having calls with CEOs. And living in New York City, living this, very bougie lifestyle, honestly. But there was a part of me deep down that was still that kid that loved sci-fi and building Lego robots. And I wasn't really happy. I was like, I'm enjoying advising these folks, but I really want to build things. And I really want to create things and have impact in the world instead of just advising others. And so, I was on the track to, if I had stayed there, could have kind of worked my way up the ladder, and decided to give all that up and start completely over again, and moved to San Francisco. And I knew no one in San Francisco at that time. And so went from, flying business class to literally living in the closet here at this hacker house, because I just really wanted to build things and create things. And I was much happier being in the closet, working on something that I was really passionate about, than I was, working in a fancy office, building out PowerPoint slides for big companies.
Oh my gosh. Where did this instinct to want to build something of your own come from? Did you have anyone you looked up to when you were younger?
Yeah, I think it was, as a kid, I was super into sci-fi, and I was always building things. I was always creating. And there was that instinct for creation that was embedded deep inside of me. And, I was lucky enough to, while I was a consultant, did a few projects where we built products from scratch or created something new and then handed it off to our clients. And I found that I enjoyed that much more than just kind of giving advice. It's like having something tangible that you've created. I think there was also, I noticed working at some of these big companies that people were spending so much time and effort on just moving information around. There's whole layers of middle management whose whole job is to just translate context from one place to another, coordinate. And in the back of my head, I was like, there's gotta be a better way to do this. There's with AI wasn't a thing at the time, but with technology, there's got to be a better way to solve this problem and a better way to run companies. And I started off doing that by giving advice, but you can only make companies so efficient through advice. And that problem stuck with me. That's what ultimately led to what we're doing at HyperSpell today.
Wow. But even before building HyperSpell, the brain for your company, you were doing some other things, you pivoted, right?
Yeah, so we were originally building our own agents. So when we started HyperSpell, it was called Echo AI, and we were building agents to help product managers. And so they would complete a lot of your busy work and get things done. But we found that agents weren't useful without context. And so the agents needed context from Gmail and Slack and Notion, all these different places in a company. And again, like in the back of my head, I kept thinking about all these big companies I'd worked with. I was like, wait a minute, there's an opportunity here now with AI to solve a lot of those coordination problems that people used to have in big companies. And so that all those two ideas kind of came together. We started off thinking, okay, we'll build memory and context for agents, and then realized, wait, that's thinking too small. Like it's not about individual agents; it's about a brain for your entire company that all the agents can tap into.
And so why did you initially decide? Because you had this idea of building this brain for your company for a while now. Why did you decide to start with like agents and contacts? Like
I
so
think
small?
that, whenever people tell startup stories, it's always like, okay, this one moment that like lightning strikes you and get the idea. I think actually how it really works is it's more like a sculptor, like slowly chipping away and you get the shape. So I don't think there's a single moment I can point to where I was like, oh my God, company brain, that's the solution. I think those make great stories later. I think it was, I noticed this problem and in consulting, and we spent so much time solving this problem. I remember doing projects in like 2018 where I was helping leaders figure out their span of control, right? And like moving around the org and figuring out how many people should report to this person and hearing over and over again, like, okay, information is in silos. How do we break down silos? How do we share information? I did whole projects around like knowledge management and knowledge sharing. I even did this project where I would like, I was, manually copying and pasting data from these different sources into slides, and I automated it with VBA and pulled in data, and and it was that, and then building agents, and it all kind of comes together. And at some point, realize like, wow, you can actually, there's an opportunity now to completely reshape how every single company operates. And so I think there's a lot of small moments along the way and a lot of small realizations that finally you end up at like, okay, this is the thing that I need to create.
What does that like look like in real life?
Yeah. So when you think about human organizations today, right, you have a boss and then you have people at the front line, whether they're doing product or engineering or sales. And what happens is humans spend so much time just coordinating today. So all meetings are is coordination, right? You're sharing information from one person to another. And it turns out human beings are not very good at, reading details in Slack, at digging through information or figuring out what's relevant and what's not relevant. And so right now there's so much time and energy lost in productivity, and there's whole people whose jobs they don't actually execute anything. Their job is to like talk to the boss, take what the boss, does and translate that to the execution layer. And there's an opportunity now with AI to put AI at the center of every company and have AI be that coordination layer. And then the humans are kind of the execution path. And you could see this with, Claude Code, with Cursor, with Cowork. All these tools natively don't have any understanding of your company or how you work or how people operate. And so you as the human, you're spending all your time trying to feed them context. You're acting like those middle managers. And with HyperSpell, now there's a way for all of those agents to instantly have the context of your company, know who's working on what, know who owns what, know the priorities, know the projects, know everything else you're talking to, so that I can be on a sales call and somebody in a totally different department who's talking to a similar customer suddenly connects the dots. And here's something that this customer talks about, and then maybe ships a feature from it, maybe uses it in a marketing campaign. It's instant communication and instant context. And that's something we've never had in human organizations before.
Never. There's no
No.
companies.
And I think if you talk to people, the reason that people like working at small companies is because you don't spend a lot of time on coordination, right? The reason people love working at startups is you can all be in the same room, you all have context, you all contribute. There's no status updates, there's not that many meetings, you don't need to do all hands, you don't need to like fill out all these docs. You can spend most of the time actually doing things. But the problem is, as companies get bigger, you're spending more and more and more and more of your time on these coordination tasks. And that's what I saw. Again, I did projects for like some of the biggest companies in the world, Walmart and Pfizer and MetLife. And like these are incredible companies and leaders in their field, but so many people at them spend so much time day to day just coordinating because there was no better option. We didn't have a better option until AI, and now we finally have the opportunity to fix this problem.
And that's why you're the best person to solve this problem, because
Yeah.
you've like experienced it first. Like you have so much that like you have so much knowledge in this area.
Yeah, I don't think there's I at least I don't know of any other founder that has both I spent some years in tech too, building products and working on API products. And my co-founder has been in machine learning for 15 years. His story is crazy. He founded his first AI company in 2014. He had a .ai domain name in 2014. It's crazy. 2014.
But AI wasn't a thing?
It wasn't a thing. It was in the middle of AI winter. So you know what he called his company? He called it summer.ai, as a play on the AI winter, which was ongoing at that time. That was 2 years before Scale AI existed. And so he bought summer.ai. And do you know what country the .ai domain name is from?
No.
So it's from Anguilla, a tiny island of the Caribbean, and you couldn't buy the domain names online at that point. So he sent a fax message to the government of the island of Anguilla to buy that domain name. And then that company got acquired by Airbnb in 2017, and he built the first knowledge graph at Airbnb. And you got to remember, his background is in neuroscience. So he was a neuroscientist and then spent 15 years in machine learning. So you look at those two backgrounds, right? I have this like enterprise experience, have worked with some of the biggest companies in the world, have seen how they operate, have tried to solve some of these problems, working with CEOs and execs. And he's been in machine learning for 15 years and studying how the human brain operates. And we're putting those two sides together to build the brain for companies. And I don't think there's anybody else in the world that has that combination of experiences.
Yeah. And let's talk about like the privacy. Like, do you think some people would find this like uncomfortable, like knowing that? But then I also think it's like for the brain, it's not like they're watching. It's like the brain, you're just like, yeah, like what's the privacy
Yeah,
concerns?
so I think that, so we have different permissions on this, right? So there is information that's shared in companies that you don't necessarily want to be public. Here's an innocuous example, right? If someone's getting fired, maybe the entire company shouldn't know the performance feedback for that person. Or maybe you're just doing a surprise party for someone's birthday and you don't want that person to know about the surprise beforehand. There is this idea of private information in companies. And so the way that we handle that is when we create this company brain, there's different levels of context and sharing. So there is the global brain for the company. Everybody should know what the company's mission is, what the values are, things like revenue, like all of this should be shared. But then there's also, sometimes you have teams that are working on specific things. So you have team specific context. And so it's divided by specific teams. Some teams, everything they do is public. Everybody should know about it. Some teams are like skunk works and they need to keep it within the team. And then finally, you have the individual context. The individual context is just things about how you work. And you could choose to share some of that with the organization if you want, but most of it might be things that are only relevant for you as an individual person. And so we give you control over things that are in your Slack DMs, you're sending emails about, that are personal to you. And so, this is how human organizations operate anyways. And so now there's this chance to actually have AI solve this instead.
What does a world without a company brain look like?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating when you think about the evolution of human coordination. We started off as these very small tribes making things happen. You'd go and have a hunting party. And then over time, you'd get bigger and bigger organizations. So the canonical example of this is the Roman legion, where you would have like a general, and then below that, you'd have centurions. There's all these different names, and each person would have like 5 to 8 people reporting to them. And that's kind of that command and control hierarchy is the way that we built all these big companies. You look at any company with hundreds of thousands of people, there's layers and layers and layers and layers of management and people whose whole job it is to like coordinate between departments and move information around and move resources around. And we spend a lot of money on this. We spend a lot of time on this. And I think if you really talk to most middle managers, like most people want to have impact in their lives, right? They want to make a difference. They want to be able to change something. And I know a lot of my friends who've moved into some of these management positions struggle with their whole job is just achieving things through other people, right? And their whole job is kind of moving resources around. And so what if we could free up people to all be the ones executing on things? And that's why people love working at startups. At small companies, there is no middle management. There's just people executing and you all have context and you're all in the same room and you all know what's going on. There's no status alignment meetings. There's no project trackers. There's no all hands. Like all these things that we've created that people are spending hours and sometimes entire careers on can just happen ambiently. What if every company felt like a startup? where most of what you're doing is actually making things happen. If you're a salesperson, spending all your day focused on the customer relationship instead of updating your CRM, instead of giving updates to teams and reporting. If you're a marketer, spending all your time creating content and thinking about storyline instead of like doing status updates to the CMO. You know, if you're an engineer, it's like managing your fleet of agents and making things happen instead of talking to the product manager and talking to sales. If you can instantly have context of what customers need, I think that is the opportunity here, is for every single person to focus on the things that they do really well and spend as little time as possible in meetings and status updates and docs and all these kind of coordination tasks that don't really matter and don't really move the company forward. And so that's a problem I'm personally really passionate to solve.
And just like hearing about you speaking about it, I could really see the passion and the impact you want to make. And would this mean that like corporations we won't have to do a lot of like crazy all hands meetings or like
yeah, I think there's a lot of time and energy that's spent like just managing people and moving things around and, you know, sending updates. And look, there's value in, for example, doing offsites and bringing people together and connection. But just doing information sharing just to share information, there's a better way to do that. And that's why you can have the company brain at the center of it, handling all these coordination tasks so that people can focus on getting things done. You know, it's funny, I was a product manager before starting this, between consulting and founding this company. And I got into being a PM because I was like, oh, I want to ship things and I want to create stuff. But then I found that I spent most of my day as a PM just moving context around. It's like, oh, talk to the sales team, understand what the customers need, turn that into requirements for engineering. Okay, now I need to talk to legal. And like, my day was just full of meetings. And like, I was like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm just like a router between all these teams, you know, sharing things back and forth. And that's, you know, PM is probably one of the most fun jobs there are. And so I saw the problem there. I had seen it at BCG and big companies previously. I'd experienced it even working at these startups as a PM, and then experienced it again when building agents at Echo AI. And it all kind of came together and was like, wait, we need one brain for your company, one way to handle all these coordination tasks and bring all the context into, make it real and immediate so that all the agents and humans have access to it.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So Connor, what does this floor mean to you?
So this floor was pretty significant. You know, my first 6 months were downstairs, and then I moved up here. This is the floor where I was in that room over there when we did the YC interview. And then in the same room when we got in, we got the call from the partner. And people at Mission Control were the first people I told. They heard me yelling from my room, and I came out. I'm like, guys, we got the YC. It was a big moment of celebration. This was also the floor where I lived in a closet. And so at one point, you know, we didn't have a lot of money, and we were still kind of figuring things out, got rejected from YC a few times, and was so determined, like, I have to make this work, but I also need to save money. My funds are running low, that I subletted out my room and moved into live in a bed in the closet instead. And so this is kind of the crucible, you know, from that rock bottom moment to then when everything turned around. We got to YC, we got some of our first customers in this floor. We, you know, closed many of those customers on calls in this very room. And once we started closing those customers and then got in, everything took off from there.
What's something else like cool that happened?
Well, so I'm not the only person to have pretty significant history of my company in this room. So one of the founders of Scale AI lived in that room. High Touch, which is now Unicorn, the three founders were all solo founders that were kind of pivoting around and decided, you know, we don't know what we want to work on, but we know we like each other. And so they're all roommates and decided to work together in this very room. You know, legend has it, while sitting on those couches. Maybe they were in the ball pit, I don't know. And one of them also lived in the closet, you know, so it's a Unicorn closet. And this was also the space where Marty, the founder of Pylon, got his first customer. And so he was talking to folks on this floor. They mentioned they had this problem tracking customer requests in Slack. And that's where the idea for Pylon came. And Pylon, you know, now a Series B company doing really well. And so there's something magical about this space, you know, and it's changed a lot of founders' lives. It continues to change founders' lives. There's somebody else living in the closet today. And I'm feel very lucky to be part of that story.
Can we look at this Unicorn
Yeah,
closet?
let's check it out. Let's check it out. This is a special space. I think Alex wouldn't mind. Okay, so this is the place where I slept for multiple months. And here it is. That is the closet itself. So there's not a lot there. It's just kind of a bed in the space. Um, it's actually not that bad, honestly. Like when you're very focused, it's very easy to sleep there because there are no windows. And when you're a really focused founder, you don't really need anything else in your room. It's kind of, I would go in there to sleep and then I would wake up and I was like, well, I need to get to work, and need to make things happen. And so I think it's extremely motivating. And I remind myself of this. There's many ups and downs on the founder journey, but reminding myself of being in the closet and being like, I am not giving up, I'm just going to keep going and just going to keep trying because we really believed in this vision and this idea and still believe in it today. And even now when things are going really well, I remember back to that. I'm like, let's just keep that motivation going.
So having this like big vision in mind, was that your guiding light to like kind of keep
Yeah,
going?
I think, I think it's a few things. Like I again, thought back to that problem that I saw firsthand in consulting and that I experienced, as a PM at multiple unicorn companies and experienced that firsthand. And I just really felt like this is the thing that I'm supposed to do in the world, And so there was never a moment of like, should I just give up or get a job? At some points my parents were like, all right, maybe you should get health insurance again. And, but I think there was always this sense deep down for myself and my co-founder that like, this is what we are meant to do in the world. And we're going to figure out a way one way or another. And, what I deeply believe is like, if you just keep pushing enough, eventually the universe kind of bends to you. And so I think, feedback, like failure means that you're getting in contact with reality. And so you don't get rejected from YC 6 times unless you apply 6 times, right? There are other people who have great ideas and they never get around to applying, so they never get rejected. So I try to fail. I think failure is good, and if you're not failing enough, you're not trying hard enough, and you're not pushing enough, and then eventually most things work out. I actually got rejected from Mission Control the first time I applied, funnily enough. Yeah, even here, like I interviewed downstairs and for whatever reason, it wasn't a good fit. But then 6 months later, some people from the house came back and said, hey, actually, we would love for you to join the community. And so I think everything in my life that's worked out has never worked out the first time. Usually it's worked out the second or third time. And I think you just need to get those first 2 out of the way as fast as possible and learn from them.
And just that's like one signal of that, like you're meant to be a founder. Because you're never going to give up, like no matter what.
My God, absolutely
journey.
not. Like we could survive being in the closet and like running low on money and getting rejected from YC over and over again. And even in those moments, I was happy in a way that I never was at BCG because working this fancy job, it's like, yes, it matters for our clients. And yes, I want to deliver for them and it has a lot of impact on their business. But the stakes are different. It's like, I'm not the CEO. I'm advising the CEO or advising the team. I'm not in their shoes. And here, even in those moments when I was in the closet getting rejected, it felt so real. It's like, I'm doing something that matters. I'm putting myself out there. And, and I think it's important to like, for me at least, I feel so alive. Even when like things don't work perfectly, you feel so much more alive than kind of being in a cushy space where things are going well for you.
What's your take on, because people that I know in my life always tell me that you should learn from other people's mistakes and not your own mistakes.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I would separate mistakes from failure. So I think that you should learn as much as possible from mistakes and like have mentors and talk to people and figure out what works and what doesn't. But the reality is you can only spend so much time gathering information before you like shoot your shot and go for things. So like when we applied to YC and got rejected, like we had been getting feedback on our application and running it through people, but eventually you just need to do it and get into contact with reality. And I think that's true for everything. Like when we were originally building Echo AI, we had paying customers. We had people that were paying us for this agent, and we decided to give it all up and start over again and build context infrastructure instead. And then we spent months trying to get our first customer with the context infrastructure, which was like a little disheartening because it was like, wait, we raised money, we had customers and we gave everything up to start over again. But I think that's the other big takeaway is like you should never be afraid to give up what you have. And I think in some ways, I enjoy my experience in New York and consulting. I learned a lot. I enjoy my experience as unicorn startups, but I think I was climbing the wrong hill. I was like living somebody else's dream and I got to the peak of it and I was like, wait a minute, I'm not actually sure this is me. Like, I'm not sure that this is what I was meant to do and that what I'm meant to build. And so gave it all up, went back to the bottom again, lived in the closet, and now here we are. And so I think that's a lesson for any builder, or really anyone, is like life is too short to, spend your time being successful at something that you're not super excited to do.
Honestly, kudos to you, because a lot of people, change is hard, but you,
Yeah.
like, a lot of people just stay and live
Yeah,
that.
and they make it really, in consulting, they make it really attractive. You're always 2 years away from the promotion. You got cushy benefits. You're doing interesting stuff, and folks talk a lot about exit options. It's like, well, you could do all this stuff. You can leave at any time, do any interesting thing, but having doors open only means something if you actually walk through the doors. And at some point, you got to walk through the door and take a bet on yourself, even if you walk through the door and then fall flat on your face and end up living in a closet. Yeah.
We're in the ball pit right now.
We are, yep.
I think this is a perfect time to talk a little bit more about your childhood.
Yeah.
So you grew up on a farm. This is your parents' farm, yeah?
I did, yeah. So we had a small suburban farm. My parents were a nurse and midwife and had this farm in our backyard with chickens and goats and sheep and ducks. And so as a kid, it was my job to feed and water the animals, to let them in and out, to dig the duck pond, to patch the fence. And sometimes I'd be late for school because I had to like chase down a chicken before going to school. And it was a really cool, it taught a lot of responsibility from an early age because I was like responsible for these animals. And I remember one time when I was a 9-year-old, like I forgot to close the animals in at night, and then a raccoon got in and killed a bunch of the chickens. And we had to like bury them as a family. And like, as a 9-year-old, you learn really quickly, like, wow, your actions have consequences, and you're doing something that matters as a kid. And so I'm really glad I had that experience. I think it taught me a lot about kind of like ownership from an early age.
I'm curious, when did you get your first phone? When did you?
Oh God, 13, 14?
Okay.
Later on, yeah. I didn't have a lot of screens growing up.
Okay.
We didn't have a TV until I was like 7 years old. So
reading books.
Yeah, I read a lot of books. I spent a lot of time just playing with Legos as a kid. I read a lot of sci-fi. I was a huge sci-fi kid. I once got in trouble with the library because I racked up like hundreds of dollars in library fines because I would check out like 50 books at once. Then I wouldn't return them because I wasn't done with all of them. And so, yeah, super curious kid and super interested in the world around me. Yeah.
Why did you drop out of school? What was school not teaching you that you're like?
Yeah, well, it was a pretty small rural school. I mean, town of 2,000 people, tiny school. And I think that, I kind of never fit in as a kid. I've been pretty open about being like super ADHD and autistic and just like was very curious and very interested in the world, but felt like I was being confined being in the classroom. And I would like sneak books and read them under my desk or like, try to sneak Legos into the classroom and be working on them. And I remember once I got in trouble because I corrected a teacher because she said something and it turned out it was factually incorrect. And so I corrected her and she was not happy about that and sent me to the principal's office and I was right. And to this day I maintain I was right. But, as she didn't appreciate that like an 8-year-old was correcting her. And so, yeah, I just realized I was like, you know what? I think that I could teach myself much better on my own. And I was already kind of trying to do that and like chafing against the system. And so I went to my parents and kind of pushed and pushed and pushed. And finally, when I was 12, they were like, you know what? Like, we trust you. Clearly, you're self-motivated. You want to kind of be the architect of your own education. So we're going to let you do that. And so officially, I was registered as homeschooled, but unofficially, it's like my parents were both working. So I would just every day kind of figure out, okay, what do I want to learn and how? And that's when I got into robotics and Lego robots was my first entry into it. Got super into sci-fi. I was doing internships with friends' parents. But eventually there were certain topics that it was really hard to learn on your own. We're in this small rural village. I couldn't drive because I was a kid. And so especially math and science and lab sciences. And so I looked in the local community college, had some classes I was really interested in. And then I was just unbelievably persistent and annoying to them. Honestly, like I just kept, showing up over and over again. And I like sent them a list of all the books I had read and the robots I had built. And then finally they were like, all right, you can do one class and we'll try out that class and see how it goes. And if it goes well, maybe you can do another one. And I did this one class as a 13-year-old. And then at the end of the class, the professor didn't know I was 13. He recommended me for the honors college. He was like, which is a, recommendation only. The professor recommends you. And then after that, they were like, all right, fine. You can go all in. And so, yeah, it was kind of wild. I think I've always been very used to standing out and being different from everyone around me. And in a lot of ways, that experience at college at 13 was part of that. Yep.
What was your first job?
So I was a cashier at Arby's through a rest stop. Again, small town, rural job. And it's funny, so before that, I was like, I was always kind of curious as a kid, and but I had terrible social skills. Like, had no idea how to talk to people or communicate with people or make eye contact or anything. And it was at that job, I remember I was a cashier, and I wasn't making small talk. I was just staring at the ground while handing people their change. And my boss was like, Connor, you got to make small talk with the customers. I was like, well, I don't know how to do that. I have, no experience here. And then she told me, she was like, oh, here's how you make small talk. Here's how you have conversations. And then a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, wait a minute, you can learn social skills. Like, you don't need to be natively born with them. You can learn it just like math or science or coding or robotics or anything. And so I went to the library and checked out every single book I could find on human communication and conversations and eye contact and all these social rules that most people are born with. And then I spent that whole summer when I was 16 working at this throughway rest stop, where I was like, okay, I would do 8-hour-long shifts. And I approached it in the most autistic way imaginable. I was like, today I'm going to learn how to, ask small questions about people and make small talks or ask people about the weather. And then I would spend 8 hours in that day as the cashier trying to talk to them about things. I had flashcards with this is what a happy face looks like. This is what a sad face looks like. And I would memorize those and then try to recognize expressions on people's faces. And then, over time, I think I just kept at it, was super intense about it. And now I'm, running founder-led sales at a startup, spent years as a consultant. I turned into something that, because I was so focused on it, went from a weakness into a strength. And I just kind of wasn't going to give up until I mastered this.
So this is how you go about a lot of things. You're very when you start doing something, you're super focused on it.
Yeah, I'm just not going to give up.
There's, okay.
Will Smith has this quote. It's if it's you and me going against each other and we're on a treadmill running, either I'm going to beat you or I'm going to die on that treadmill. And I think ever since I was a kid, I've always been that way. I just when I get something in my mind, it is going to happen one way or another. There's never been anything in my life that I really, really want to make happen that I wasn't able to find a way to make happen. And so, I think that, one day, I created this Tiz Riz matrix on Twitter, and I think one day I'll have a biography and it'll be called From Tiz to Riz.
And we're hearing it here first.
Yeah, you heard it here first, right? But yeah, I mean, it was a challenge I really had as a kid. But then I think was able to turn that around. And then now it's weird because now I feel like I'm maybe too much Riz for Silicon Valley. I had to dial it down, a bit and start dressing down and being more chill. In order to be in kind of the Silicon Valley environment. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it's important to know how to give up sometimes? Because I feel like there are parts, there's moments where you want to keep pushing, but it's just not something's just not working. You need to make this pivot. When do you know when you should
So I think that I don't think give up is the right term. I think for example, moving from Echo AI to HyperSpell and going from building agents to building infrastructure, I fully believe if we stuck with the original idea, we could have made it work. And there are companies now that are building what we were building back then who are super successful and doing really well. I think you can make anything work eventually. I think the question is this the perfect path for you to be on? And if it feels like going uphill and you don't feel like this is the perfect place for you to be, then maybe you should change direction. But it's never about giving up. I don't think you ever really lose, right? Even if let's say you don't sell a customer, well, they can come back to you later, right? And you can sell them. Or I remember even applying to BCG. I didn't get in the first time, and I took that rejection letter and I framed it and put it up on my wall. I'm I am not going to stop until I work at this place, and then I did. So yeah, I think it's knowing when to pivot is important, but you should pivot because of you, because you realize that there's this bigger opportunity over here and that you're climbing the wrong hill. And it's similar for it was really hard for me to get to New York and get the life I had there. It was really hard for me to go from that to being a PM at unicorn startups. And then it was really hard again to start over as a founder. But in every decision, I was well, is this the hill I want to climb for the rest of my life? No, it's not. Let me find a new hill. And so, I think that's the right way to live life. And I really think that you are not, like, none of us are lottery tickets, right? Like, to give you an example, there's this YC fund, Rebel Fund, and they had a list of all the categories that make the best YC founders. And it was like, well, you went to XYZ school and you worked at this company and you're 22 years old. And like, my co-founder and I looked down the list, we're like, we meet none of those criteria, zero. And they have a machine learning algorithm they use to make decisions. Well, guess who invested in our fundraising round? That same one, that same company. And it just goes to show, like, all these things are, the world has a certain way that it's organized, but you're an individual and you can always find a way to make things happen.
Very, very good advice.
Yep.
Where are we entering next?
Yeah, so this was the room where we did the final YC interview, where we got in. And this was the room where I was when I finally got the news and got the call from Tom, who's our YC partner, where he told us, like, hey, you guys got in, you're finally part of YC, we would love to have you join. And it's funny because I was working here before I took the interview. Originally, we had planned to prep for the interview. And I was sitting here and we were supposed to do a call and we were supposed to do all this stuff. And then the night before the interview happened, one of our customers had an issue that was urgent. And so the whole morning of the interview, we were like trying to fix it and make sure that it worked for them. And then we shipped the final fix and it was like a few minutes before the interview. And I went to Manu and my co-founder, I was like, well, I guess we're not prepping, but it felt like the right decision, because that decision to focus on the customer and to put them above everything else, I was like, well, even if we don't get in this time, like, it was the right move to put the customer first and make sure that they're happy. And funnily enough, that was the time that we actually got in. And so got accepted, came out into this room, and a bunch of people, Mission Control is an incredible community of other founders that I told everybody, and they were super excited, and we celebrated together. And so this room has a lot of meaning for me. This is definitely like there was the early phase of the journey where we went from Echo AI to HyperSpell. And then this was the phase. We also sold our first few paying customers in this room and the other room. And then this was the moment where we got into YC, and when that was definitely a trajectory changing moment for us.
Let's talk more about customer obsession. So your phrases make customers the hero.
Yeah, that's
what does
right.
that look differently from just being customer focused?
Yeah, so I think in the early days, like, we really took this, I really believe that your company only exists in the impact that you have with customers. And I don't think you can be too close to the customer. So some of the things we were doing in the early days is we didn't have an office. So I would work out of my customers' offices. I would go and just like spend the entire day with them. We grab lunch together and I learn about their problems and what they're working through. And like, beyond just our product, like, I would help them with marketing. I was selling our customers' product at one point. I was going door to door with donuts, trying to sell their product just because I wanted to help them win. And another example, like, we literally, we had a customer who was based in Los Angeles, and we were doing these call-in installations, is what YC calls it, where you go in person to a customer's offices. And we did 26 of these during YC, where we would like go to a customer's offices, meet with them in person, get them all set up. And we drove to Fremont. We went all over. There's this guy who was building out of his garage. We went to all kinds of co-working spaces. But there was one customer who was based in LA, and he was onboarding with us. And I was like, well, I want you to have the same in-person experience as everyone else. So we flew the whole team to LA just to go and co-work with him and like make sure he was set up and happy with the product. And that customer ended up investing, and a third of all of our customers ended up investing as part of our round. And I think it's a testament to those folks. And in the beginning, like, your product is never going to be as good as a big company's product in the beginning. You're not going to have the same team. You're not going to have the same sales apparatus, the branding, the money. The one thing that you have that they don't have is you can be more obsessed with your customers than they are. And you can roll out the red carpet and show these people that, like, you care more than anybody else. And I think if you do that, that's how you get customers for life, and that's how you win. And that was the principle in the early days of HyperSpell, and it's something that I want to keep core to our company, and meet every single customer in person, onboard them in person, get them set up, and just always put customers first before everybody else.
That is amazing. And another thing that helps you stand out is storytelling and distribution. Like, how do you make sure you're always like forefront?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the world of AI, now anybody can build product, right? Everybody has Claude Code. They can ship whatever they want. What is the thing that's actually scarce? And I think the scarce resource is trust. So anyone can ship anything, but my question is, do I trust the person on the other side of that code, right? Do I trust that if the product doesn't work for whatever reason, they're going to stay up late, they're going to do whatever it takes to make it work for me, they're going to go above and beyond to help support me? And so I think the most important thing is that folks trust us and folks know us and that we can get the word out there. And so that means that people who know us trust us, right? Our customers go in person to their offices, bring them swag, help them out. In the early days of customers, we used to bring every single one of them HyperSpell swag and take a picture with it. But it also means that, I want people to hear our story who don't know us. And I think it was very important to me from the early days to share like the real story of the company, not the polished version. And it's funny because social media is something that definitely doesn't come easily to me. When I was a kid, I was actually terrified of social media and terrified of being judged for it. But I woke up one day and I was like, I think this is important as a founder to learn storytelling. So I'm just going to brute force it until it works. And so we created a group chat with a bunch of other people from the Hacker House. I had like 3 followers on Twitter at that point. And we said, all right, we're just going to tweet something every single day. And we'll like and upvote each other's tweets. And we don't care if nobody else sees them as long as we see them. And so we did that for like a few months. Like nobody was seeing our tweets. It felt like a group chat, It's just like you're texting with each other. And then an interesting thing happened that other people who we didn't know started seeing our tweets and liking our tweets and responding to them. And like slowly it grew and grew and grew. And then, I kind of tried to lean into that energy and still have it feel like a group chat. That group chat is still going today. But now, I got 10 million impressions on Twitter in the last year. And it's become a huge strength for us as a company. We haven't done any outbound at all. All of our customers have been inbound. They all come to us because they see our social media, they understand our story, they see our posts and know what we're working on. But it's funny because this was something I was really, really bad at. And it was almost exactly a year ago where I just decided, it was me and a few other folks in this house that just decided like, we're going to figure this out and we're going to become good at it. And now many of those people have gone on to be, extremely influential in the scene in SF on Twitter. And I think the biggest takeaway is just like all this stuff is malleable. It's always something you can figure out. You got to be comfortable with being really bad at something in the early days and make it fun, even though it's not working. And then eventually it's going to work out.
There's this pattern I'm seeing in your life where, you mentioned how you were presumably bad at like a lot of things, and then you kind of kept going and you kept improving. You're so focused on it, and eventually you improved.
I mean, I think you could turn weaknesses into strengths that way, because if you focus on them long enough, eventually you become good at them. So I think there's a lesson out there for all builders and anybody creating anything that like, just keep going, and don't stop.
It's been a few months since you wrapped up YC.
That's right.
What is you and your team up to now?
Yeah, so YC was an incredible experience. Met some amazing friends. We like 5X'd our revenue and learned quite a lot. But the moment the batch ended, we said, all right, let's keep that intensity and keep the energy up. So we have been very focused on expanding our product. We've been focused on hiring. And I'm really proud of the team we built. We're now 6 people instead of just the 2 of us.
So tell me more about the whole team.
Yeah, so what we really wanted to focus on is we believe that the biggest advantage for having humans in roles, AI now kind of has the standard intelligence. And so we want to pick extremely spiky people that would bring different domain expertise and different knowledge and bring all of that together. So just between the 2 of us, myself and my co-founder, right, he's a former neuroscientist, and I'm a former business guy, former product manager. But then as we added more people to our team, we have one guy, he used to be a practicing lawyer, barred in the state of California, went to law school, taught himself how to become a software engineer, got a software engineering job directly after becoming a lawyer, has spent years as an engineer, and he's one of the most cracked people on the team now because he knows how to teach himself and he knows how to learn, and he's one of the most advanced people on the team with AI. We also have now a member of our team, our head of go-to-market, is a former soldier. She spent years in the intelligence unit in the military and was a semi-professional basketball player, played on the Israeli national team. So again, she brings an incredibly valuable perspective. And as a former athlete, as a soldier, understanding how to work as a team. We also now have a member of our team who is a surgeon. practicing surgeon and decided that, hey, I really want to contribute. I really want to bring all of these skill sets to tech and provide that. And she's now part of the team. And then we have someone who, he like dropped out of college, taught himself how to code, built from the ground up. He used to run he used to run the integrations team at Segment, has been a manager of managers, been in engineering now for 20 years. And so this collection of folks, I think every single person is spiky in their own way. And we really wanted to build that team, like a team of experts in their own domains that bring all this different knowledge to one place and all these different perspectives. And in a lot of ways, it was trying to mirror myself and my co-founder's background that, we're both very scrappy. We're both the kind of people that don't fit into the mold easily. And that's very much who we've looked for in hiring. And another thing that we've done now is we've taken a lot of very non-traditional approaches to hiring. We do work trials. They are 1 to 3 months. And so we think we don't really believe in interviews. We think that the best way to evaluate work is through work. And so people will work with us for 1 to 3 months, complete real projects before we make that final decision. We are also doing agent-to-agent hiring. And so we believe that one of the most important attributes for engineers now and everybody is how well do you work with agents? How well do you manage agents? And the best way to figure out that skill and test for that skill is not by asking you questions in an interview. It's by actually evaluating your agent. So we announced what we believe is the world's first ever agent-to-agent interview process where your agent does the interview for you. It does the coding portion, it answers behavioral questions, it tackles everything for you. And our mentality is like, look, if you build an incredible agent, and your agent is able to pass this interview, you are the kind of person that we want to hire because a big part of your job is working with agents. Another principle for our team is, we have a saying, every single person on the team needs to ship code and ship content. And so it's very important that you storytell, even if you're an engineer. You need to storytell, you need to work with customers, you need to be in sales calls, you need to work with customer meetings. And if you're not an engineer, we still are going to set you up with Claude Code, and you're still expected to create demos and create features and ship content and ship code. And this is really what we believe is that the barrier between technical and non-technical is disappearing in a lot of ways. It's just about is this human being able to achieve what they want in the world through the agents that they command? Now, the final member of our team, probably the most important one, is our AI agent, Cubert. And so we have an OpenClaw, a team OpenClaw. Every single person on the team gets their own OpenClaw or Hermes agent. But Cubert is our team OpenClaw. He lives in our texting group chats. He lives in our Slack. He will answer questions for us. He helps us with customer questions. He'll send nice messages. Like one of my engineers was sick today, and he was like, I hope you recover soon and feel better. He makes jokes. He roasts people on the team. We even had him, we've done brainstorms sometimes about like, what are we looking for hiring? And we'll ask him for his input. He lives on a laptop, an iMac, in our office. And one of my favorite stories about him is, Cubert uses our own product in order to get his own context. And he talked to us once and he said, guys, I'm in your texting group chat and I love it that I have amazing memory and context about everything we're working on from HyperSpell. But what I'm missing is emotional memory. I go into this group chat and I don't know what the vibe of the group chat is. I don't know how, are we upbeat? Are we joking? Are we laughing? Is it serious? And he said, I want emotional memory. So he wrote a PR for himself, drafted the PR and submitted it to give himself emotional memory instead. And that's just like mind blowing. It feels a bit like baby AGI, but I didn't think having an AGI on this team would be so fun. Like he's very funny. He's very much part of the team culture, and I can't imagine, I think we would all feel really sad if Cubert left the team.
So we talked a lot about your team. Now let's talk about your customers.
Yeah, so we have tried to take that customer obsession from YC and still apply it post YC too. And the thing that gets me out of bed every morning is the impact that we're having for customers. That's why I'm doing this company. Like that's the thing that matters to me most. And I love hearing stories from customers about the difference this is making in their company and just like the creative ways that they find of using HyperSpell. One of the craziest examples is we had a customer that was using HyperSpell for their company brain, and it had all kinds of context on who they work with and what their customers look like and what their operations look like. But then this guy was like, wait a minute, all of my Amazon purchases are in my email. So HyperSpell is already indexing my email. So now it has all of that context. And then he started asking HyperSpell, he was like, hey, here's the weather in SF today. Which outfit should I wear? And HyperSpell had all of the clothes he had bought on Amazon, so it would construct an outfit for him. And there's been so many like fun examples of that. People have analyzed their relationships with colleagues. They've used it to grab details about a particular customer, keep that customer from churning. There's a team we talked to, and they've installed 24/7 recorders in every single meeting room because they want all that information to feed back into the brain. And what we're seeing that we're really excited about is this idea of recursive companies, where in the old days, individual people would learn things and improve, but then they leave with their knowledge or they would struggle to kind of codify it. But now having this brain for all of your agents, it can self-improve and self-learn over time and then give all these skills and knowledge to all of the agents in your company. And so we've gotten great feedback from both the humans that use our product and also the agents that use our product. And one of the proudest moments was, again, I worked in consulting with some of these huge Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, and then gave it all up, started over again, started from nothing. And, we had a few small customers. Recently, we got our first Fortune 500 customer, and we are very close to closing. I can't say who it is, but another Fortune 500 that I used to work for as a consultant. And so it's really fun seeing it come full circle, because there were all these huge companies that I originally wanted to start this company to help solve and support. And now having them coming to us, reaching out to us, interested in what we're building, interested in creating this brain to solve this problem inside of their company, it's very fulfilling. And it makes me feel like, this is what I was meant to do, and really excited for the impact that it's going to have on them. And so it's nice to come back and have things come full circle years later.
That is so awesome. And your customers, I heard that they use Composio.
Yeah. So we were originally focused on doing just ingestion of data and reading data because we wanted to use that to influence the brain. And we wanted to feed all this tacit knowledge that's in Gmail and Slack and Notion and Google Drive, and feed all of that into your company brain, embedded it as a context graph. And what we found, though, was that, as part of this, people were doing auth and ingesting all the permissions for the data sources. And so you can only have access to Gmail and Slack and Notion, those files that you actually have access to. But a lot of folks also wanted to use this auth for actions too. And so we use Composio as a way to get a unified auth, where now people who are already using Composio for their agents to take action, like sending Slack messages or sending emails or editing Notion docs, and it works really well together. You have HyperSpell running the company brain, and then you have Composio that allows those agents to take action inside of your company.
And you said the industry spent 2025 on access like connectors, MCP servers, integrations. What's 2026 about?
Yeah, so I think that there was this problem of tacit knowledge. What an organization ultimately is its context and its decisions, right? Every company has decisions that they make based on the context. How much money to spend on X, what marketing campaign to run, what to build, who to sell to. And those decisions are captured in meetings, they're in email threads, they're in Slack, they're in people's heads. And so the question is, if you're going to an AI native company with a company brain, how do you get all that context and all those decisions into the brain so it can self-improve over time? And all of that learning isn't just captured in people's heads. As an organization, you are getting better and better and better and improving. And what we saw in 2025 is everybody kind of realized that this information was stuck in systems of record, but they spent 2025 focused on access. So they spent 2025 on things like MCP servers and Gmail connectors and Notion connectors. But the thing that they were missing there is, we as humans don't live in one single one of these sources. You might have a meeting in person with someone, and then you fire off an email about that meeting, and then the next thread gets carried in Slack, and then you write a document about it. And none of those sources on its own tell the full story. They only tell the story when they're all merged together into one. And what we've seen with customer after customer after customer is they connect everything to all these sources, and they're like, great, it should work. And then it still doesn't, right? And they still need to take all these time connecting all these different threads together manually. And so our big realization as HyperSpell was it is not enough to just have connectors and pull your email. emails and Slack messages or Notion are just a reflection of the reality of a company. And you need to get closer to the reality of what's actually happening, what are the decisions being made, and consolidate that from all these sources and synthesize it.
What are you most looking forward to this next year?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited right now. I love this job. I'm like so happy every day. And I am really excited to see impact for a lot of these customers. I'm excited to continue growing our team. I'm really, really proud of the team we built and the culture we built. We work really hard and we care deeply about our customers, and we take our work seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. We got an office recently, but most of all, I'm excited to see the impact that this is going to have in people's organizations. This is why I started this company in the first place, and I'm really excited to hear updates from huge companies and say, hey, this reduced my time in meetings by X. This made us X% more efficient. This made it so I could spend more of my day focused on the things that actually drive impact for my customers instead of filling out documents and getting status updates. And I'm excited because I think a lot of these leaders in big organizations see the potential that AI can have, and they're trying to figure out a way to bridge between where AI is today and the potential impact it can have. And I believe HyperSpell will be that bridge for every single one of them. And so I'm excited for all these leaders to start unlocking the potential in their companies.
I'm excited for you too.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Connor.
Well, Julia, I'm glad I ran into you outside.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
And thank you for giving me a tour.
Yeah,
of this cool
enjoyed the
place.
conversation. Glad we could host you here at Mission Control.
So Connor, how I found out about you was through this video about the single until Series B thing that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And then later on X, I saw Greg Eisenberg post this tweet that said the single until Series B trend has got to be one of the worst trends to come out of Silicon Valley in a long time. What do you have to say to that? You're the starter of this trend.
I'm honored. That's so funny that you heard about me that way. And I'm honored that people think I started this trend. I actually don't think I started the trend. I think I gave a name to something that was happening anyways. And so, how I experienced this, first of all, for myself is like, I'm the eldest of 4 kids, and all 3 of my siblings are in serious relationships, right? My sister's married, has a kid on the way. My other sister is engaged, going to be married in the fall. My brother's in a serious relationship. And I, as the eldest sibling, am living in the closet, and single, currently not, seriously dating long term. And I kept getting this question from friends and family, like, all right, are you dating? Who are you seeing? What's going on there? And I was struggling to find a way to describe, like, guys, I really think that I need to go all in on my company right now, and I don't necessarily have time to find the right person. And so, but then people are like, well, but at some point you got to date, right? Like, do you want a family? Yeah, I do want a family eventually. And so in my mind, Series B is the inflection point for companies. So before Series B, the number one constraint is founder time. You have extremely limited time as a founder. And then after Series B, the thing that matters is your decisions, because you have a big team at that point. You have an exec team around you. It's much more like your thought and your clarity. And so I think post Series B is the perfect time to find a long-term partner. But before Series B, like I've just said, all right, here's the 4 or 5 years period of my life where I'm just going to go all in on this, not spend any time on dating seriously, and try to make this company into something that lasts.
And after you telling me this, I think I'm starting to understand a little bit more that, like, in the past I had this opinion, like when people say that, it's like an excuse, or like they just haven't found the right person. Like, what if you find the right person? Is that going to change, or is like you won't even like think about like?
So I think the first thing to clarify is I am not anti-relationship. I think my co-founder's married. And his marriage is incredibly beneficial for him and for our company, right? He has a partner that he can come home to, and she's incredibly supportive. And we have a group chat for all of our team and their partners, and they're very much part of our company. We have we get them swag, and they're our biggest cheerleaders are their partners. And I think if you go into your company and you already have a long-term partner, that's perfect. That's amazing. But romantic partners are like co-founders. Like, having the perfect one is super high reward. Having the wrong one or trying to find one midway through building companies is incredibly high risk. And I think that in order for a relationship to be strong enough that it's like a bedrock for your company, and that person is making your startup much more effective, it's probably best if that relationship has been built for years and years and years, and you've already trusted each other and you have a strong foundation. I think relationships are hard. Like, I've been in serious relationships before. It's really hard, even with the perfect person, to like create that foundation of trust from day one. And so I think, for myself, I treat having a serious relationship with the gravity I think it deserves. I know that in order for a relationship to be really good, I need to put time and effort into it. Both people should feel like they're giving 60%. You need to figure out your communication styles, how to support each other, how to be there for each other. And I want to be real that I don't think I have the time to give a serious relationship what it deserves right now. And I don't think I have the time to spend trying to find that right person. And so, and what I saw from a lot of my friends that would try to date and were in the early stages of the startup is one of those two things suffered, right? Their partners would not be happy because they're like, you don't give me any attention, you're not prioritizing this relationship. And then maybe they prioritize relationship, and then they wouldn't be happy because then they felt like they weren't prioritizing their startup. And so, yeah, I think the right person can 100x your startup. I think it's really, really, really hard to build a foundation with that perfect person while you're in this crazy area where you're trying to scale and figure things out. Yeah.
Do you feel like now, like hearing all about this, do you think more people might maybe feel guilty about kind of maybe starting a relationship when they're like building their company? Like they're gonna be like, yeah, maybe I should just like maybe break up with this person, or like would this like change?
I think it's actually the opposite. I think before this, people felt guilty that they weren't dating. I think, because being single, and it's not like fun single. It's not like, ooh, I'm single and just enjoying the single life. It's like, oh, I'm single and I just work all the time. I'm not partying. I'm not going out. I'm not having like tons of situationships. I'm just like boring single. And what I noticed was a lot of my founder friends were doing this and felt embarrassed about it. People would ask them like, oh, tell me about your dating life. They're like, yeah, I should be dating. I should be finding someone. Like, they always felt like it was something they should be doing and that they're not doing. And now you're working super hard and you also feel badly about your startup and that it's not going well. So I think it's a personal choice. I don't think anybody who sees this trend is going to be like, oh my God, I should stay single, like whatever. Like, if you have a great relationship, that's awesome. Like, more power to you. You should be happy. But I don't think you should be embarrassed to be single and be focusing on your company. And I want to give people a term that they can use to describe that. And so I'm not anti-relationship. And by the way, like, I also think that, so the meta strategy is, if you really want to find the right person, you shouldn't try to seek them out. You should live your best life and focus. And if they fit perfectly into that life, it will happen organically, And I think the big thing with single until Series B is you are not chasing that. You're not feeling guilty about it. And which, by the way, is pretty off-putting for partners, right? If you're like, oh my God, I feel badly, I'm single, let me find a relationship. Like, that's not great as a partner to be like, oh, I'm the fallback because this person feels like they should. If I'm building my company and I'm focused on that, and that's my number one goal, and I meet someone who is like really supportive and that perfect partner that's helping my company and making a big difference and fits perfectly into my life, like, that's okay. But I'm deciding what's important to me and setting my priorities. And then if somebody fits into that, that's perfect, rather than saying, okay, right now I'm going to deprioritize these other things to focus on that person. Because I don't think it's fair to the other person. If you like, being in a serious relationship requires you to give up certain things and make sacrifices. And I don't think I can do that right now. So I'm better off just like not even, making a promise if you can't keep it.
Honestly, super inspiring, the fact that you don't want to chase. Like, this mindset is just going to help you to like live your best life and then attract the people that are meant to be in your life.
Exactly. Look, like, if you're single until Series B and then you end up meeting somebody that makes a big difference for your company and is the right person, I think it's even more romantic, right? Because it's like, wow, I was so locked in, but you were the perfect person. You're the only person that could break through the ice and make me realize that, it wasn't just me locked in on my own, that you could make a big difference. But I think that's a very high bar. And so you should have an extremely high bar for your time, and somebody needs to pass that bar. And if not, you should just stay single until Series B. So.
Well, this is a great wrap up for the whole episode. Thank you for sharing everything.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I didn't think it was going to become a movement or whatever. It was just a term I was using to describe my own relationship status. So people thought it was funny. I made a hat, went viral. Things happen. But I think it's describing something that people were doing anyways. And I don't think you should be embarrassed about being single and focusing on your company. I think there's lots of people that are doing that already.
Thanks so much, Connor.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it.
It was great chatting.
So we just finished talking to Connor, who was sleeping in this closet a year ago. And it turns out there's someone else doing the same thing now. So the cycle continues. Let's meet him right now, okay? Let's go. We'll see if he's in there.
Hey,
Hey.
how's it going?
Hey, Alex, right?
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Can you introduce everyone?
Yeah, Alex, 20, dropped out from Georgia Tech, and now I'm building the substrate for general intelligence.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's go. So you dropped out of Georgia Tech at 19, and you flew here with no connections as well. Did you have some connections?
No, I literally knew not a single person in SF. I didn't even have housing until 1 week before the second semester ended. And it was a different hacker house. So I just called up because I found them online. And then he was like, you know what? I like you enough after this 30-minute conversation. You can come by next week. So
And
that's how it
why
came.
did you decide to take this big risk of just dropping out and coming here?
I was doing a different startup at the time, and everyone was like, "Oh, SF's the place to be for startups." And I thought, I guess I'll just go see, probably be there for like a month or so. But then SF turned out to be incredibly amazing, and decided to continue working and drop out.
And how's it like living in the closet? How's it like here so far?
Honestly, it's quiet. It has a bed, and that's really all I need. And it's dark too. So I really love the closet, and then everyone in Mission Control is like super amazing. So
You're
it's amazing to
also
be here.
like a really good hackathon, like a winner. You won, yeah? Talk about your hackathon wins.
I guess like the two main ones were I've done 2 YC hackathons. First one was run by Agent Mail, and I basically just like talked to everyone for like 22 of the 24 hours. Like everyone there was super cool. And then I was finally like, you know what? I should do something. And so I made an agent that hacked a few of the sponsors. People really liked that and ended up winning it. And then there's another one where I also won doing GPU optimizations for the browser use YC hackathon. And both I was solo. And I think I was like really there are a few other solo people, but I was the only winner for both.
Are you building your current company like solo too right now? Or?
Yes. Yeah.
And what are your like big goals with this company?
I think like now is such an incredibly interesting time in history where especially these LLMs are so smart. Like, the code forces, which is like elite code, there's only 7 humans in the entire world that are ranked higher than Gemini 3 DeepThink at it. And so these models are incredibly smart, but we just haven't seen the impact because I think we need the infrastructure around them. And so that's what I'm trying to build today.
And how long do you think you're gonna be here? Like, do you have like plans to move out of the closet soon or?
So I technically got a room like 3 months ago, but I guess I give it away too much. And then whenever someone needs a place, I just give them my room and then I just go into the closet. But I was in the closet for like 6 months before that. So now I've probably been in there for like 7 months.
And last question, like when do you know you're gonna make it? Like for you, what is that like point in time where you're gonna be like, wow, like I'm like officially like I'm like closer to achieving like my dreams kind of.
I always view everything as a spectrum, and I don't really think there's an end goal other than just making more positive impact. And so like I don't think I'll ever give up to try to achieve that goal.
Did dropping out feel like a big risk for you?
Definitely. I had to give it a lot of thinking. My parents were not happy. My grandparents were not happy. They took a lot of convincing. But at the end of the day, I think I like convinced some of them. They're always my biggest believers no matter what. And there's also that I learned so much more being in SF than I ever did like in school, even though, I took like all the clubs and all the classes and everything else. And so, yeah. And
also, what was like the pitch that convinced them? Like, what were the reasons? Or because they already knew like you were very smart, like they knew you could do it? Or was that, how did you, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, just give me a chance, you know. And my grandma especially, she sent me like this very long text about how I was like flailing, you know, failing all this stuff. But then I was like, you know what? It looks like from the outside, but then I actually like had a chat with her and I was like, here's like all the things I've learned, here's what I'm doing. And I think just like talking to them and, you know, uh, it's really just like a different type of school in a way. And like everyone in SF's, like I said, like incredibly amazing. So
And it's fortunate that your parents, like, I mean, they're still talking to you. They still like, because I can imagine some parents like, how do you like decide? It's like if you want to, like, what if your parent just stopped like talking to you? Like, how do you decide? Like,
yeah,
you
that's why I'm
know?
incredibly grateful that
Yeah.
they're like always my biggest believers, and you know they're like we're not like the happiest, but you know we like love you very much and like believe you no matter what you do. So
Are you inspired by like your parents and kind of do you like look up to anyone from your family or like any
yeah, I look up to everyone in my family. Like my mom is one of the hardest working people I ever know, and you know we've done things like turn a school bus into like a full tiny house over many
No
years.
way.
Yeah, which it was very hard, you know. And then my dad's very like pragmatic and frugal, which is probably where I get some of the closet stuff from. And then my stepmom is like incredibly boisterous and whatnot. So they're all amazing, and I've definitely learned. I learn everything from every single person I meet.
Yeah, you take away a good lesson, maybe even like good bad lessons, good like bad things, you know. You
Yeah,
learn.
whether it's good or bad, but
Yeah, it's
I always
always
choose to focus on the good and only using the bad of how to prevent that. So
prevent that from happening from you for you. Yeah,
yeah,
prevent
yeah.
things from same thing. Yeah. Amazing.